Experts are projecting that New York could reach its apex of the coronavirus cases this week. And yesterday, the Surgeon General, Jerome Adams, told the nation to brace itself for a grim chapter in U.S. history. Take a look.
The next week is going to be our Pearl Harbor moment. It's going to be our 9/11 moment. It's going to be the hardest moment for many Americans in their entire lives. And we really need to understand that if we want to flatten that curve and get through to the other side, everyone needs to do their part.
Well, clearly the hyperbole bug bit him in the behind. I mean, using the comparison to Pearl Harbor. I mean, what did you guys feel about this? Sarah?
Well, hearing words like Pearl Harbor and 9/11, I clearly only read about Pearl Harbor in history books, but I was here in New York City for 9/11. So the heaviness of that definitely weighed on me. Those references are triggers for anyone who's lived through that before. The hard part about that is being in New York during that time. It was such a sad time, but it was very unifying. The city came together. It was a magical place, and it was about embracing people, coming together. I think the hard part about this is to do the right thing and stick in this together right now is to stay apart, which kind of goes against, I think, so much of what we need as humans, that social connection, affection, lifting each other up. And so right now I am at home with my husband and my kids, which can be a handful, but I know at the end of the day, I feel very lucky to be with other people. My heart goes out to people right now that are battling this alone. I think it's an isolating time, and we've been doing it now for weeks. So I think the fact that the hardest part is yet to come, comparing it to the Pearl Harbor, the 9/11, because right now I think a lot of people are hitting the end of kind of their mental health and their mental well-being. So right now I just remind everyone to reach out to people that you know aren't with anyone else, to remind them they're not alone, and we will get through this together.
Megan, you also agree with the tone that he struck. Why is that?
Well, I feel like everyone on this show has felt that this was a historical paradigm shift in everything we know. We're about to enter what can easily be described as a second Great Depression among everything else that's been going on. These weekends for me are very long, as I think they are for anyone who's working and then has the weekend off to think about this. And one of the things over the weekend that I have been particularly scared and alarmed by is the absolute racial inequality that this virus is hitting. In Michigan, 35% of the COVID cases are Black people, 24% are white. Listen to this. 40% of Black people who contract COVID in Michigan will die, as opposed to 28% of white people. Now, these numbers are across the board, especially in New York City. They're all comparable. And I think there was a thought that maybe this virus would be some kind of equalizer for everyone. And if anything, the coronavirus has showed that this racial bias is showing up in larger numbers. And it's very hard to watch this country let an entire segment of the population get sicker and die faster in a different way. And I don't know what the answer to this is. I was watching AOC's live Instagram about this over the weekend. I was watching a lot of commentators talk about this, and that maybe we need to start sending medical care into different communities in different areas that don't have the same kind of access to medical care that everyone on this show does. And I think this will be one of the moments in history that particularly will come out very damning in American history.
Sonny, you think that Adams is part of the problem?
I do, but to respond to what Megan's point is, the bottom line here is the reason I think that you're seeing the racial disparity not only in Detroit but in other places is because there is also a disparity between black and white in terms of healthcare, of course, and in terms of financial there are financial issues, and that's something that's been going on for a very, very long time, and that's why I think you're seeing this disparity in terms of coronavirus. But also, I do think the Surgeon General is part of the problem, because I have lost complete confidence in the Surgeon General, I think, as many Americans have, because in February 1st, he was tweeting out things like roses are red, violets are blue, risk is low for coronavirus, but high for the flu, so get your flu shot. March 2nd on Fox and Friends, he's saying, more people are going to die from the flu than from coronavirus. March 8th, he's saying that they feel pretty good that some parts of the country have contained coronavirus when you look at the flu. And so I'm concerned about why there's this huge shift in messaging now. All of a sudden, what does he know that we don't know? What does he know that Americans now aren't being told? Because we know that this administration has been very opaque in its messaging. And so it doesn't give me any confidence, actually, now that the Surgeon General somehow is making comparisons to 9/11 and Pearl Harbor, when this is supposed to be the top doc in the country.
Well, he's actually not the top doc, clearly. I mean, I'm listening to Fauci. He's the only one that seems to have any idea how this is working. And, I don't trust anyone who is not sure where they stand on the righteousness of giving people information that could save their life. For me, it's a no-brainer, So, and listening to him talk, it's like, this is not Pearl Harbor. This didn't sneak up on us. Someone told us this was coming and we didn't do anything. Let's start with that. This is not 9/11 because we didn't look up and see this coming. This was, people said this is coming, here it's coming, and no one acted fast enough to keep this off. And Megan, just to your point, perhaps if they would have left Obamacare alone so that people could actually get some help, that might have been helpful in this particular aspect, but we'll never know because we're in the world we're in right now.
I think the points you're making are very important, Whoopi. And I do think, obviously, Sunny, everyone, I think, on this show we've talked at length about healthcare and income inequality, but there is something about New Yorkers. Again, if you are a African-American person living in the projects in an apartment that's 300, 400, I don't know, however small it is, and you're being asked to self-quarantine in an area as opposed to the 1% in New York that have been able to leave the city, go to bigger places, go to giant homes. And I do think maybe there needs to be an emphasis or different kind of medical care or different kind of, tents being set up in different areas of the city that don't have the same access as the rest of the, and this isn't just in New York, but all cities that this is happening to, because I do think if it comes out at the end of this that we let a certain segment of the population die at larger numbers, this is going to be a moment in history we will not come back from. And I think it's just particularly damaging.
Megan, I think what you're saying specifically, though, is you were referencing something about this being unequal in the healthcare. The problem with something like this is the virus is an equalizer. The way we're able to handle it or fight back only magnifies the socioeconomic divides in this country. So when you say to send in certain medical care, I agree, because this is.
Hold on to the rest of that thought because it's an important one. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Before we get started, Megan, you wanted me to correct something. So the correct stat of the number of people who have died in Michigan, 40% have been black.
You have a 40% higher likelihood of dying. I mean, stats are equally damaging, but yes.
Okay. So Sarah, you were saying before I cut you off.
Oh, yeah. So what I was saying is that although this virus is a bit of an equalizer, it doesn't discriminate, the ability to fight it, the tools and resources to fight back, this actually furthers the socioeconomic divide. And I feel like people that are on have less income right now are getting hit doubly because, one, they're taking the biggest risks in these service industry jobs that are still considered essential. So they're putting themselves out there, and yet if and when they are infected, they have less to fight back with. Their jobs aren't always secure. They don't always have health care. So I think that's the scary part is the weakest among us, you could say, are getting hit twice.